Hey Virgo, welcome to your timeless reading. I pulled your cards from the movie tarot, which is gifted to me by a friend from film school. And I'm also pulling from the movie Genius deck, which is just like a playing card deck, but since we're on the movie theme, I thought it would be fun to use it as like a little oracle deck. So these are timeless readings. Use your discernment when listening to tarot readings because you know your life and your situation better than anyone else. And they're general readings, which means that I'm looking more at energies, patterns, like the story of kind of what's going on and how you might navigate it, which is meant as confirmation or guidance rather than me telling you what will happen or what you should do because you have free will and the future's not set in stone. Or is it, Donnie Darko? But we'll get to that later. And what else? Yeah, I guess we'll just dive in. We have the High Priestess, Winona Ryder, Beetlejuice. We have the Sun, Julie Andrews. We have Page of Swords, Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. Three of Cups, Donnie Darko, Death. Two of Cups, nice. Three of Swords, whoops. The Hierophant, The Godfather. Page of Coins, Slumdog Millionaire. King of Cups, Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. And the Ace of Wands, Bruce Lee, and Lauren Bacall, perhaps a Four of Wands energy. So I was just kind of reading up on Donnie Darko and death, and first of all, it's like very like teenage emo. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had. But this movie is also kind of about like fate and about he's kind of like a little bit of a savior complex guy, you know, where he like sacrifices himself to save the world. And it's like the scene I always remember in Donnie Darko is like when like those like tubes of like goo like came out of people, like kind of showing that like people were like on a path that was like somewhat predetermined for them. And like so with death, I mean, thinking about it as a tarot card now, it's like a card of transformation. Let's read from the little booklet that this comes with, because it might have interesting things to say. Okay. Death marks the need for pausing and reflecting. Sure. An ending merits breathing space before a new beginning. You may be unable to avoid the inevitable, but remember that life goes on. Donnie Darko illuminating his unusual positivity about the end of the world. I hope that when the world comes to an end, I can breathe a sigh of relief, because there will be so much to look forward to. Find ways to rejuvenate and engage with life for renewed vitality. But, like, the end of the world was, like, not actually the end of the world. It was, like, there were two different timelines, and, like, he was just collapsing one of the timelines and, like, sacrificing himself in the process, I guess. And, then like for everyone else life went on like as normal without any pause or like it was like no one really knew what happened type of thing. And there are plenty of stories like that, right, where like someone saves the world but no one even knows like how close the world actually came to ending. And death is here in your reading, Virgo, and we also have the Three of Swords, which is a little bit of heartbreak energy. So there might be something going on for you that, this is like just genuinely what I'm feeling based on this information. There might be something for you that feels like a heartbreak and it feels like the end of the world. But it does also feel like, per Donnie Darko and this whole conversation we're having, that what has broken your heart and feels like the end of the world is actually just like redirecting you onto a new path or onto a new timeline that is more, like, I assume, especially with, like, everything coming up, like, the sun, in your highest good. And, yeah, so I think that, like, kind of your act one, Virgo, of your story feels like, or where you're starting from, just feels kind of like this place where you're a little bit, like, a little down in the dumps. I mean, I keep mentioning Sleepless in Seattle just because I just watched it, but that's literally a movie that's a romantic comedy and the first scene is a funeral, right? And we have death here, and so it just feels like there's been a loss or like just kind of like a general heartbreak, something like an ending for sure. And in that ending that might have been painful, you're kind of like at the beginning of your story actually. And the beginning of your story, my dog is in here and I just want to make sure she's okay. Okay. So this is the beginning of your story is kind of feeling like you don't really know where you are anymore. I mean, if you really, like, in death, right? Like, assuming life goes on after death, I don't think we know the answer to that. But, like, let's say that it does. You know, maybe you're kind of, like, feeling like a little bit like a ghost vibe. Like, where you're just like, where am I? What happened? Am I dead? And I don't think you're actually dead. Virgo, it seems unlikely that ghosts watch my tarot videos. Although if you really are a ghost, please leave a comment below if you can. I'd love to hear from you about your experience. But more likely, I think, Virgo, you're just kind of in this state of being of not maybe even really knowing who you are anymore. And perhaps I've said enough on that, but I think speaking of death, we got Lydia Dietz, the High Priestess, Beetlejuice. I'm going to read from the book on her as well, because I like learning from this book. The High Priestess is the strong, silent type who sees under the surface. It is best to keep your lips sealed for now. Time may be needed in a quiet, private place, seeking greater balance before speaking truths. Something remains a puzzle, that's life. Lydia Dietz explaining her perspective on life. My whole life is a dark room. One big dark room. Life lesson. Trust what you know and take time to work out who you can trust. Yeah, I mean, but I think what I want to add with the High Priestess is that, like, part of what makes Lydia Dietz different is that she can see dead people, and that also that she believes in that veil between the other world. And it's, like, kind of interesting to me, at least, Virgo, that, like, I'm, like, kind of halfway joking about ghosts and stuff, but, and I don't know, look, I'm, disclaimer, like, I'm agnostic, I like to believe, it's fun to believe, but, like, I really don't know, and, like, I also choose to believe in science, and, you know, there's no scientific proof for ghosts, but, and I've never seen one, or even experienced one, and I kind of don't want to. Virgo, what I'm trying to say is that you're in this place where you don't recognize yourself, and you feel a little bit in limbo, and you're maybe feeling, like, a little bit kind of, like, lost and not here nor there, and not even really sure, like, where you should be going, right? Like, there's not necessarily, like, a destination or a goal in mind at the moment. It's just kind of, like, the fallout of this loss and this heartbreak over here, and maybe it does feel like the end of the world, like, at least on an emotional level, in that, like, everything you thought you knew, or everything that you thought your life was building towards is just not the narrative of your life anymore. And so with the High Priestess, it kind of feels like you are being guided to that next thing, like, to what is right for you, to, like, as I mentioned before with Donnie Darko, you are being redirected to the right path. My alarm's gonna go off, and I'll come back. So I do feel like you are being redirected onto the right path, and with this High Priestess energy, I feel like you are maybe, like, I do think that weirdly in death, like, something there, it's a transformation, right? So, like, even, like, in heartbreak, there's, like, a transformation, and I think the transformation aspect is just speaking to me about how even if you're feeling totally lost, like, I think that you have, like, also gained, like, a higher attunement, or, like, a higher sensitivity, like, an ability to navigate this new landscape that you find you're in, like, kind of, that you've been, like, upgraded on some level, or, like, maybe the better word is just transformed. You've been transformed on some level by what you've experienced, by being kind of, like, displaced. And the High Priestess is, like, your energy of, like, you can navigate this, and, like, you might not know how to navigate it, but that's intuition, and it feels like it's very heightened at this time, and have access to synchronicities, and there are guides, like, bringing you along. I think even in Donnie Darko, there's, like, kind of this sense of, like, him being guided by, like, external forces that are kind of, like, he's able to tap into it in a way that, like, other people cannot. And that feels like an echo here with the High Priestess as well. I should watch Beetlejuice again. Anyway, Lauren Bacall, I Googled her, and I think what I found fun about her was that she was in a ton of movies, some like old Hollywood classics, and then some like weirder, more modern day stuff too. So she had like a very long career. Let's see if I can pull up some of her filmography. Like, she did, I guess, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is like Marilyn Monroe. But then she also did Scooby-Doo and The Goblin King. You know? Like, to me, that is prolific. Or she did Trumbo. And she also did, like, All I Want for Christmas. So I think, to me, I'm, like, Virgo, like, really drawn to this idea of, like, being able to be multiple things with Lauren Bacall, particularly, like, we're talking about, like, the High Priestess, of, like, her being able to see the dead and not adverse, you know what I mean? Like, kind of like that you can be of two worlds, or you can be of, like, more than one thing. Kind of like that even though you might initially be in act one of our story here, like, experiencing a loss and a death, or I hope it's not a literal death, and if it is, I am sorry for your loss. It could just be a metaphorical loss, but whatever it is, I feel like you're kind of developing this range, is just how I want to put it. That is kind of, like, unique, and also, I think, new to you. So, and, you know, we have the Page of Coins, which is Slumdog Millionaire, and I think this is just, to me, really reiterating the fact that you are being guided by synchronicities, because in this movie, it was like the whole thing was like it was written, meaning like he got all the answers to Who Wants to Be a Billionaire correct because he had lived through all the experiences of the right answers, I believe. It's been a while since I've seen it. And so no one believed that he knew all the right answers, but he just knew because he had experienced it and lived it. And I feel like we were talking, you know, with these two too about being guided. So I just feel like there is a lot of, like, divine synchronistic support around you. This could be actual spirit guides if you believe in that. It could be literal ghosts if you believe in that. Like, it could just be your intuition. It could just be dreams. Whatever it is for you that, like, resonates, I think that there is, like, kind of a sense of, even in this hard, difficult time, you are being guided through by something, like a higher power, essentially. So, or it is just part of your narrative or your story. Actually, you know, I love the Spiritual Gaze, Gayz with the Z, and they just did a podcast episode about progressed astrology, which I had just learned about for the first time through them. And, like, it's interesting, but it's like basically the first couple days of our lives have an impact on the rest of our life. And so we, like, live through these seasons of, like, kind of like, even though I'm, for example, even though I'm a Cancer sun, like, I'm right now in a Leo sun phase, essentially. And, like, that doesn't have to make sense to you. I think what I'm saying more is, like, the idea of destiny is, like, that's what a progressed chart really speaks of, is that, like, things are kind of, like, evolving on, like, a charted course based on the past. And, like, there's just a little bit of that where, like, things are kind of, like, coming together, even if you feel in the moment kind of like I'm nowhere. There's just all these kind of, like, things that are just sort of slowly but surely, like, adding up, putting you on the right path. And so just a simpler example would be if you break up with the wrong guy, it's all leading you to, or girl or person or whatever, it's all leading you to the right love. 444 on the timer. All right, 2 cups, right? So, like, it just feels like this is sort of the energy you're being redirected to, plus we have the sun. I mean, I feel like there's just, you know, they say it's darkest before the dawn. And, I mean, it just lately has felt just dark, right? And then there's no dawn, so I don't know. But I guess there will be, Virgo. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're meeting a partner. but it could be. I feel like, to me, the Two of Cups is connection and vulnerability and kind of like an equal give and take. And then we have the Sun, which is like happiness. And I'll read from the book, as I want to do. Live in the light of the sun and experience the positive power of regular nurture. With the right support, we can achieve so much. Discover your bliss. You are deserving of good results. Maria explaining her unbridled happiness and subsequent lateness. Reverend Mother, sorry, I couldn't help myself. The hills were beckoning. The sky was so blue today. Everything was so green and fragrant. I had to be a part of it. Recognize and nurture the places and relationships where your light can shine. Well, look, I think, sometimes when things have been so dark, or when we have experienced a death, whether literally or metaphorically, when things get good again, I think they're even better, right? And I think that's kind of what I feel a little bit with like Maria and like her sensitivity to like all the good things in life, is that when we have like blessings in our life after like a period, especially, it's kind of like when you haven't eaten a long time and then you finally eat and it's like the food tastes really good or whatever, or like it's just the simple things that we can take for granted. Maybe we're just like able to appreciate it on a deeper level. And Virgo with the Sun as well, and Maria, I just feel like she was like another Mary Poppins type. Like Julie Andrews was very good at coming into people's lives and kind of like making them better with a little bit of love. And maybe this is you giving that to yourself. Maybe this is someone else coming into your life giving it to you. Maybe you're this person in someone else's life. But I'm gonna pause. Okay. So yeah, I just feel like this might even come a little bit out of nowhere, but I think that in a way it doesn't come out of nowhere. It kind of feels like the whole conversation we're having was about being like synchronistically led to something. And so I think it's kind of the sensation of like both. It's like you've been feeling so lost that when you feel found again, when you feel kind of like you're coming home, or when things are getting better or brighter, or you see that light at the end of the tunnel, like it might just be that like in retrospect, like it all makes sense how you got to this point in your life. But at the same time, I keep mentioning Sleepless in Seattle, but it's like Meg Ryan is basically stalking Tom Hanks the entire movie. So it's like not too, and she like sends him a letter saying meet me at the top of the Empire State Building. So it's not like a total surprise that they like, found each other there, because it was like written that they should do that. But no one knew what was going to happen, if anyone was going to show up, or like they were like kind of on the fence the whole time. So it was always kind of like a little bit at stake, even though it was planned. I think is the vibe. And just to like read a review I found on Letterboxd from Laura about Sleepless in Seattle. She says that the movie taps into parallels and forces them to intersect, but it somehow always feels kismet. Planning feels electrifying, accidental, because even finding exactly what you were looking for is surprising. It's like a miracle when it all works out. I thought that was a very beautiful review from Laura on Letterboxd under Sleepless in Seattle. And I feel like it's kind of the energy and the vibe, Virgo, for you. Is that like, especially this is like the act 2 of your story, maybe the midpoint, you're kind of like coming to this like new sense of self. And like, now let's talk about, and also just side note, you have more range, right? So like part of that range, I think, is like really being able to appreciate and cherish like the blessings that are like coming to you. And I feel like in having the Two of Cups, like the connection, and maybe this is like a little bit more personal, either self-love or again, love with another person, or just like kind of like reconnecting with like people who are already in your life on a deeper level, kind of this like restoration energy with the Sun and Maria. I think it just opens you up to even more community with the Three of Cups. Like this just feels kind of like if you did meet a romantic partner and then you're meeting all their friends, and like it's just like opening up your like network and your social circle, but like kind of like you're getting out there more, and maybe just meeting new people, like especially we were talking about kind of like the feeling of being a ghost or being lost or being displaced, And it's like if you found home again, like if you found like a new sense of belonging, it's like that belonging is just kind of like expanding and amplifying itself, so that like you're continuing, I think, to thrive in like whatever new environment you're in or whatever new set of circumstances that you're in. And so this could literally be meeting more people, or it could be like just having more opportunities. Whatever it is with the Three of Cups, I just feel like the love is expanding. And like the love meaning just the better feelings, the good feelings, the feelings of like, oh, okay, I do know where I belong, and my belonging is being amplified the more I let myself feel that belonging and sense of belonging, etc. Okay. Okay, so things are going well for you, Virgo. I love to see it. And then we have the Page of Swords representing a taxi driver, the Hierophant, the King of Cups, Bill Murray, and the Ace of Wands, Bruce Lee. So this feels like kind of almost weirdly like the sequel. Like we're already, like you get 2 movies in this for some reason. But you're at the midpoint, I guess. But it just feels like kind of like the beginning of your reading is you being led to the place where you belong. And now that you're here at the place you belong, it's like you are here to do things, right? Like I feel like the Hierophant, it's the Godfather. I'm gonna read from the book. I just don't really have a lot of opinions about this movie, to be honest. So we'll see what the book has to say. Conductor of ceremonies, practices, and rituals, a guru or mentor. Observe legal and social protocols and ethics. Work for a higher purpose. Follow the straight and narrow. Vito Corleone warns of the price of justice. Someday I will call upon you to do a service for me, but until that day, consider this justice a gift from on my daughter's wedding day. And it's working toward the greater good means holding your head up high. So, look, I think that The Godfather is a movie that is like, I mean, I know it's blasphemy to say, I guess, but I just find it to be a little long and boring and like about men killing people, and I don't care. That's my personal tastes. Let's talk about the Hierophant just in terms of like the notion of this is a man on some level who's responsible for a family and for a business, right? Like he's a business owner. His business is killing people. But I don't think that really applies to your life, Virgo. I would imagine if it does, if you're a ghost and or a mob boss, that's crazy that you're watching my tarot readings. It seems unlikely to me, but you never know. Anyway, I just feel like in this new setting that you're in and finding yourself in, you might also be stepping up into a leadership role or finding kind of like not only do you belong, but you're like you have purpose and like you have to lead and you have responsibility that you're maybe taking on. And I mean, this is a really weird thing that I'm getting, but it would be like if you met someone and like maybe this is becoming a parent, like actually, right? And then like that's how your life is transforming. I'm not saying all Virgos are starting families, but it just does feel kind of, to me, like the vibe and the message is that, like, in the new setting that you're in, you have a role, and maybe that's kind of why you were being led to this place anyway. I mean, to bring it back to Donnie Darko, he had a role, which was to sacrifice himself to save the world. I don't think that's true for you. I would hope not. I think it's just kind of saving the world can look many different ways, you know, and it doesn't always have to be sacrificing yourself. Sometimes we can save the world by being the person who is in charge of recycling. A very important job these days, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is for you, Virgo, but I feel like people are getting to know you and they're getting to know your skills and your attributes, and especially since you are a Virgo and like you do like a plan and you do like to kind of like organize and you do kind of like take on certain qualities of seeing how things could be better naturally. I think people are recognizing that in you and kind of asking you to step up. Let's just leave it at that. That's what we're getting there. And then I think that with the Page of Swords, representing our taxi driver, a movie I've also not seen. I think with the Page of Swords though, it's sort of like, I think that it's like a little bit of like learning to take ownership over it. Like, even though you're kind of new to the scene, I feel like you also know that you have a lot to offer. And so it's like the page is like, yes, I'm a beginner, but the swords is like, I'm smart, intelligent, energy. Like, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas to communicate. I have a lot to offer, and like I can cut through bullshit. Like, just kind of like, I think the swords is like a certain clarity, like mental clarity. And so it's like, yes, even though I'm new here, I'm also like kind of a boss. Like, he doesn't look like he's gonna pull any punches or like let anyone step all over him. So it just feels kind of like you're taking to this very naturally, and it's like people are asking you for it, but like also kind of you're like stepping up to it just because it kind of feels like, oh, it kind of like, I mean, to bring it back to The Sun and Maria, a movie I can speak about more confidently. It's like she has that whole song that's like, I have confidence, you know, and she's like, I love that song. It's so good. I'll even Google it. I have confidence. Song by Julie Andrews. And she's like, I've always longed for adventure, to do the things I've never dared. Now I'm here facing adventure. Then why am I so scared? Oh, I must stop all these doubts, all these worries. If I don't know, I'll just turn back. But I must dream of the things I am seeking. I am seeking the courage I lack. The courage to serve them with reliance, face my mistakes without defiance, show them I'm worthy, and while I show them, I'll show me. I mean, it's such a great song. I'm not a singer, but it's a great song. So let them bring on all their problems. I'll do better than my best. I have confidence they'll put me to the test, but I'll make them see I have confidence in me. I mean, I could go on, but strength lies in nights of peaceful slumbers. When you wake up, wake up. All I trust, I leave my heart to. All I trust becomes my own. I have confidence. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the vibe. You have confidence. Like, even though maybe there is a little bit of that self-doubt initially, I think you're just really stepping up to the plate with this, even though it's brand new. Whatever it is that you're being called to, this new role. And we got this Ace of Wands energy, which is Bruce Lee. And I think this is just kind of like you becoming like a little bit of a master of whatever it is that is like this new role. Like, I think it comes to you very naturally. Like, maybe it is new. Maybe you've never really done it before. Whatever it is in this community that you're being asked to do. Maybe you've never recycled, like been in charge of recycling, but like you're killing it. Just with the Ace of Wands, I feel like Bruce Lee particularly, he was very like disciplined and very much like seeking to be a master of his craft and like to be really disciplined and like really good and like to be really like, he was just a cool guy who was like all about really giving his all and his best to what he loved and to his passions and to his doings. And like, that's like there's a lot of passionate energy with this. So it just feels like you're not even doing it out of obligation. You're doing it because it like excites you and like builds you up and like lights you up, and it's a really beautiful, harmonious thing. Like, it's just kind of like feels like it's all kind of like happening. And then we got the King of Cups. I keep ending on this one for everyone for some reason. Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. But it's like King of Cups, I feel like, is being a master of your emotions. But then in this movie, I think what's interesting about him is that he like basically has like a chance in his life to share emotional intimacy with someone in a way that maybe he really never has before. And I think it's like partly, I was just having this conversation with my friend. I found it. Okay. I was having this conversation with my friend, and we were talking about like this girl who came to LA, and like all of a sudden like all these guys started hitting on her, even though she was from Portland and was the exact same person there. But like all of a sudden she came to a new environment, and like all of a sudden people started noticing her. And I was like, oh, you know, I've had similar things happen in my life where like I went to New York, and like all of a sudden, like everywhere I go, like I'm in coffee shops and people are just starting conversations with me. And like everywhere I go, I'm like meeting people, and like it's not like I changed. I'm like the same type of introvert, extrovert person I am everywhere I go. But when I'm in a new environment, I'm like kind of giving off this like adventure vibe, you know, like, and it's just kind of inviting in a certain energy of people responding to me in a different way, even though I'm the same person, it's like I'm in a new environment, so I'm more open and I'm more vulnerable, and so therefore I'm able to have a different type of interaction than I would in my home comfort zone. And that, I think, is true of Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. And your whole conversation was about kind of finding this new land, whether it's literal, like a new move, or whether it's just metaphorical, like a new place of business or a new relationship or a new set of friends, whatever it is for you, however it's playing out. I think this King of Cups energy is just speaking to the fact that you're able to blossom and bloom because you're kind of able to experience actually yourself in new ways because you're in that new environment and people are responding to you differently. So you can have new kinds of experiences that you wouldn't really normally have had in your old environment, which is why you were led to where you were led. Great, great, great. Love it. We did it, Virgo. That is your reading. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And I'm also now offering personal readings, which you can see on my site below, which there are links there, and I'd love to connect with you for a one-on-one. So please connect with me and we'll dive into what's going on with you specifically. So until then, I love you and I'll see you again next time. Bye.